Zhang Yi didn't want to continue dwelling on this topic as he waved his hand. Forget what we said at the beginning? Amongst this team, I am the captain, and you all have to listen to me regarding everything. If differences arise at that time, you guys can leave any time and I won't stop it. Chen Xiaoxiao's tone stuttered. Indeed, this was what they had agreed upon, and even though she had more thoughts, there was nothing she could do if Zhang Yi did not agree. After all, on the surface, Zhang Yi was their captain. You are really a strange person, Chen Xiaoxiao said helplessly. If it was any other team, those mutants would have agreed with insurmountable joy. He didn't say anything more on the matter, but just knocked on the table. Next, let's continue. There were still a lot of things they could discuss in depth. Just as Zhang Yi and the others were busy studying the Eclipse Moon Group's intelligence, a message reached Zhu Jing from the intelligence department of the combat center. When Zhu Jing saw the message, he couldn't help but frown deeply. This was because it clearly stated that the Nebula satellite system had monitored that the Eclipse Moon Group had begun to leave Linhai City and was heading towards Jiangning City in the northwest direction. We can't wait any longer. These guys are really trying to march towards the Central Plains. Damn these crazy people. Zhu Jing clenched his fists with a grave expression. The Eclipse Moon Group's rampage was beyond his expectations. You guys don't really think that after winning an outpost battle, that you can really treat the Jiangnan region as if it's nothing, do you? Zhu Zheng's eyes flashed with a razor-sharp light, and a dense killing intent filled the air. Jiangning Plaza, one of the busiest areas in the entire Jiangning city, was also a notorious commercial district. In the past, this place used to be occupied by the largest mutant group in Jiangning City. But nowadays, the streets that the members of Eclipse Moon walked through had hundreds of corpses fallen across them along the way. Crimson blood stained the entire street, and then before it could flow, it quickly condensed into icy blood. Phoenix Ren had his hands in the pockets of his gray suit vest, whistling a leisurely whistle as he moved forward. We'll have to find a place with plenty of supplies before we can do anything. Rest here for a while, replenish supplies, and then continue on towards the mainland. The next stop seems like it should be the city called Lingdu. Behind him stood Jinguji Saikairo by his side, who wore back-combed hair and gold-rimmed glasses, looked at him with an odd face. Things won't go as smoothly as we thought. In the battle before, it was obvious that the ones who came were not mutant troops from the Jiangnan region headquarters, but civilian organizations. After we exterminated them all, we also sent out a message, but we didn't get a response from the Jiangnan region. He exhaled a mouthful of white smoke with some annoyance in his eyes. This means that those guys still want to fight us to the end. Phoenix Ren listened to Jinguji's complaints, but a light-hearted smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Jinguji Saikairo, the former stock trader, was a complete pessimist. From the first day he met him, Jinguji would always talk about all kinds of bad news in Phoenix Ren's ears. But it was thanks to him that the Eclipse Moon organization had grown to what it was today. And in the Kanto region, they escaped from the encirclement of the Izumo group, time and time again. And the pessimist, Jinguji Saikairo, was also a strong believer and follower of the Landing faction. After the arrival of the end times, he was certain that the Neon Islands would surely be submerged in the great flood that followed the end times. If it wasn't for that, he, who was cautious and prudent by nature, would have never agreed to Phoenix Ren's crazy Landing faction plan onto Washu. Phoenix Ren smiled. Jinguji, don't be so negative all the time. Everything nowadays is in our control. He spread his arms and turned his back to everyone. At most, there will be one more crusade. The Jiangnan region will completely understand how strong we are. They will then obediently give up their crusade against us. I believe that there are quite a few smart people among them who will understand this. After all, we are not the only enemy that exists for them nowadays. Phoenix Ren said, narrowing his eyes. Just like when we were in Kanto. Eclipse Moon had clashed with the most powerful organization in the region Izumo, when they roamed across Kanto as a Ronin organization. Jinguji looked disgusted. Che, but this isn't Neon. How do you know if the leaders in the Jiangnan region have the same feelings as Izumo's executives? Phoenix Ren raised one eyebrow and said playfully, "Aren't all the higher-up guys the same all over the world?" The crowd watched the two fight with smiles on their faces, clearly accustomed to such a routine long ago. They stepped over the corpses of the Jiangning City organization and walked into this once bustling street. Jinguji pushed up his glasses. "Now then, in order to prevent an attack from the Jiangnan region, it is necessary to conduct a thorough cleansing of this region." He raised his head, his eyes flashing with a viper-like, cold light. "Don't leave a single living soul within the 5-kilometer area surrounding Jiangning Square, on the other side." The time passed quickly throughout the day. Everyone was back in the conference room of the combat center, and after a little preparation, they were about to head out to the battlefield to fight Eclipse Moon. Zhang Yi's gaze skimmed over the other outer city mutants, and it was evident that they had gone through some discussions amongst themselves yesterday. It was just that the relationship between the people appeared to be very subtle. It was naturally impossible for a temporary squad to have much mutual cooperation. One could only say that it would be good not to fall off the wagon when the time came. After all, they were not the main force in this battle. Zhu Jing said to the crowd in a very serious manner, "Everyone, there is a very bad news I want to inform you of here. Just this morning, Eclipse Moon has left Linhai City and instead arrived in the neighboring Jiangning City." As soon as these words came out, there was a man who slapped the table and stood up. "What?" Zhang Yi recognized that it was Wu Shifang, the leader of the mutant organization in Jiangning City. "How is Jiangning City now?" Wu Shifang was very worried. His family and friends were all in Jiangning City. And based on Linhai City's previous example, once Eclipse Moon arrived at a certain place, it would slaughter all the forces in that place. Zhu Jing said to Wu Shifang, "Don't get excited yet. We have already notified the people in Jiangning City to hide, saying, 'Do not ever clash with Eclipse Moon.' At present, they have occupied the Jiangning Plaza, and unsurprisingly, the organizations in that area have all been wiped out." Wu Shifang took a deep breath, his heart slightly settled. But that being said, if his forces had been attacked, they would have definitely contacted him. But even so, it was impossible for him to be at ease. Because as long as those vicious bandits stayed in Jiangning City for a day, his forces would be in danger for another. Wu Shifang stared at Zhu Jing and said seriously, "Commander Zhu, I want to go back first. To settle the business within my forces." Zhu Jing didn't say anything as Lan Xinchen, the secretary next to him, walked over and said with a cold face, "Wu Shifang, what do you think this meeting is for? You need to calm down. The most important thing for you now is to cooperate with the headquarters and complete the siege of Eclipse Moon." Wu Shifang had a tangled face, "But I'm worried about them." "Worrying is useless." Lan Xinchen chided, "Do you think that you can eliminate Eclipse Moon with your strength alone?" Wu Shifang was dumbfounded. It would not be helpful for him to go alone. Zhu Jing's gentle voice came from the side, "All right, Xinchen, he is worried about his family members and companions as well, it's understandable." Wu Shifang's heart warmed and his gaze looked towards Zhu Jing. "Commander Zhu." Zhu Jing put his hands behind his back and said with a serious face, "You can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. Those people have just arrived in Jiangning City, and they don't have a lot of people. It's impossible for them to wreak havoc on the major organizations in Jiangning City in a short period of time. We'll hold a combat meeting today to finalize the course of action. We'll act first thing tomorrow morning. As for the large and small forces in Jiangning City, we've already notified them, telling them to go into hiding as soon as possible and to avoid clashing against Eclipse Moon. You can be assured regarding their safety." Wu Shifang's heart was slightly at ease, so he nodded and sat down. Zhu Jing looked at the crowd. The goal of these guys are clear, they are heading towards the Central Plains region. That's why we must seize the moment and snuff them out in the coastal region as soon as possible. We absolutely cannot let these hateful Ronin take another step forward. Now then, initiate the final combat meeting. Please have the 3 squads, represented by their captains, state the outcome of your discussions. Zhu Zheng's gaze looked towards Zhang Yi. "Zhang Yi, let's start with you." The gazes of the crowd shifted to Zhang Yi's side. Zhang Yi coughed and stood up without haste. Since I've been asked to speak first, I'll say a few words. Zhang Yi briefly told the crowd the results of yesterday's discussion among the four of them. The success or failure of the operation was at stake, so he had barely concealed anything except for his own abilities. The most crucial thing, I think, is to thoroughly map out the abilities of the entire Eclipse Moon group. In particular, find a way to, crack their intelligence-gathering methods. That's all I have to say, over. Zhang Yi sat down after he finished speaking. After he finished speaking, many people on the scene bowed their heads in deep thought, pondering over what Zhang Yi had said. Even Deng Shintong was holding his chin with one hand in a contemplative manner. Zhu Jing nodded approvingly towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's analysis is correct. The most important thing in our war with the Eclipse Moon is intelligence. At this point, we are currently unclear about the other party's source of intelligence, so we are at a slight disadvantage. Zhu Zheng's voice suddenly became high-spirited. However, we are at an absolute advantage in other aspects. Whether it's the strength of the mutants, numbers, or logistical assistance for local battles. He crossed his arms and smiled confidently. The most crucial of all, there is also the armed assistance of our region. The crowd could not help but look at Zhu Zheng. Sichuan City's mutant Yu Xingyang inquired with a blazing gaze. Are you planning to utilize thermal weaponry and carry out a precision missile strike?